On July 22nd, in a rural part of Zhongshan town, in Fangcheng district of Guangxi, a Haval sedan was slowly making its way down a narrow country road. Just then, a Mercedes Chrysler came driving toward it from the opposite direction. The two cars found themselves face to face on that tight little road. The driver of the Haval probably didn't think much of it at the time, just another routine moment of passing on a narrow road, but that brief encounter ended up changing the course of his life. 9 days later, he had no choice but to post a sincere apology online.
经过民警同志的耐心教导，我深刻地意识到我的不当行为可能会侵犯到尊贵的梅赛德斯奔驰车主的隐私，在此，我真诚地向尊贵的梅赛德斯奔驰车主道歉，向你全家道歉。道歉一，我不应该挡你的路，我应该倒车出去给你让路，即使我后面有车的情况下，对不起。道歉二，我不应该把你用我家庭住址和姓什么之类的个人信息逼我退让的视频发布到网上，对不起。道歉三，我不应该在你拿证出来逼我退让的时候不为所动，我当时应该立即感到害怕，并倒车出去给你让路，即使我车后还有其他车的情况下，对不起。
Just 1 day later, he practically blew up the phone lines at the publicity office of the Fangchenggang Public Security Bureau.
沈访客
啊，对，
报道的这个奔驰女车主的事情，我们现在公安有没有介入？
喂，我听不到你说什么，电话可能坏了。
喂，
坏了。
Meanwhile, the entire city was suddenly swept into a massive storm, all because of that seemingly ordinary encounter on a quiet country road. Just take a look at Douyin or Bilibili. They're flooded with videos of the woman people are now calling license lady.
开是奔驰啊，开是奔驰也可以过去的，你倒一下就。
喂，想唔想白叫下佢咧？
話部人唔啲酷個，
我啊，你哪度啊？我揾亮晶嘅話啊？
路亮晶啊，有冇辦法？
啊！
家平身人證哭煙播跳。
So what exactly happened here? Let's go back to the scene on the evening of July 22nd. The driver of the Haval sedan was preparing to pass the oncoming Mercedes. To make it easier, he pulled over to the side of the road, which, in this case, was just a grassy shoulder. Half his car was already on the grass, giving the other vehicle enough room to get by on the left. He figured the Mercedes would just pass smoothly and that'd be the end of it. But to his surprise, the other car didn't drive around. It came to a stop. Then a middle-aged man got out of the Mercedes, walked over to his window and asked him to back up.
去邊頭等你部機？南嘅？啊，我都冇講呢。咁要冇咩好講啦？
The Haval driver felt a bit stuck. There was another car behind him, so backing up wasn't exactly easy. Plus, from his perspective, he had already moved over far enough. The left side had plenty of space for the Mercedes to go around. It really shouldn't have been a problem. So instead of reversing, he politely suggested that the other driver just steer around him. He wasn't rude at all. But then the man walked back to his own car. As he got there, a woman in the passenger seat handed him a phone. The two exchanged a few quiet words. And then, a young woman stepped out of the Mercedes. She walked straight up to the Haval driver's window and said, "Are you going to move or not? Are you going to move? If you're not going to move, I'll show you my credentials."
随后，车上的女子持着神秘证件登场了。
我想从旁边下。
你说什么？
我说我想从旁边下，你那里让一下我就能过了。
怎么让？
你看我这个轮胎我都到旁边去了。
要不然你就往后推一下。要不然我就拿证了哦。
你拿证怎么样咯？
那不然报警吧。
你報警有什麼用咯？拿證嚇我啊！拿證最後大晒咩啊？我咪嚟個。
He was honestly baffled. It was just a routine case of two cars meeting on a narrow road. Why was she flashing credentials? He felt a bit defiant. He thought, who are you trying to intimidate with that? It's just a normal driving situation. You talk it out, work it out. That's how this usually goes. But the young woman clearly didn't like his attitude. The moment she saw he wasn't backing down, she pulled out some kind of ID. Now, the Havel's dashcam was facing forward, so it didn't capture her showing the ID. But, by pure coincidence, there was another car right behind him. That car's dashcam caught the whole thing. According to the Havel driver later on, he remembered it had the Chinese characters for Xingzheng, meaning administrative or official permit, and a big national emblem at the top.
要让就叫我往后退，我说我也退不了，后面有车，这样，那我就拿证了哦。我听到他拿证，然后当时他手上确实是有一个黑色的那个证，什么证就不说了，就是反正就是能代表某些权利的吧。
But the Havel driver wasn't too worried. After all, he hadn't done anything wrong. But then, the man who had first come over to talk suddenly walked to the side and blurted out the Havel driver's home address. At the time, the driver actually thought the man was talking about his own address. He heard it and realized it was pretty close to where he lived. He lived there too. He figured they were probably from the same village, so there was no need to make a big deal out of it, so he didn't pay much attention. Later, after the woman showed her ID and saw the man still wasn't giving in, the three of them backed off to their car and ended up having to drive around him from the left side. As they were passing, the man in the car said to him, "Your last name is Li."
識我點解咯？咪有本證大晒咩？大家認認嗰邊咪得咯，係嘛？
紧接着他又说：“我知道你住前面的，只是我不想理你而已。”我感觉到这句话是有威胁的。
That's when he realized the man wasn't saying his own address earlier. He was talking about his address. Why? Because they had only just passed each other on the road. How could the other guy possibly know his last name was Li? That's not normal, right? He knew his surname and even said his address out loud. After Li drove away and got home, the more he thought about it, the more it felt wrong. Why? Think about it. During the whole incident, the woman had shown what looked like an enforcement ID. What does that mean? It means she wasn't just a government worker, she was with a law enforcement agency. And law enforcement officers have certain privileges. According to Chinese law, police officers have access to the Police Access System, Jing Wu Tong. That system allows them to look up citizens' information at any time, like your ID card, driver's license, property records, phone number. Even things like whether you've used drugs, visited prostitutes, had an affair. All of that can show up in the system. And all it takes is entering your license plate number. They can find everything in minutes. So Mr. Li suspected that the other party had to be a government official. The woman had shown an enforcement ID. They probably used it to instantly look up his last name, his plate number, and even his home address. But something wasn't right. They were just passing each other on a small country road. First of all, the car the other people were driving wasn't a government vehicle. Second, from the looks of it, there were three people inside: a man, a woman, and a young girl. It seemed like a family outing, something personal, not official business. Even if she was a government employee, this clearly wasn't part of her job. Just because they were trying to pass on a narrow road, she used her ID to intimidate a regular citizen. That's unacceptable, no matter how you look at it. So Mr. Li started thinking either she was impersonating a government worker, or she was one, but was abusing her authority. The more he thought about it, the more he felt he had to get to the bottom of it. So on July 23rd, he began making inquiries. First, he went to the local township office. He asked them directly, "Is this person one of your staff?" If she was, he planned to file a complaint, because she had shown an enforcement ID and looked up his personal address on the spot. But after checking, the township government told him, "She's not one of our employees."
因为乡政府这边，他管辖范围有限嘛，这个开大奔的不是政府里面的人，所以他纪委管不了。
不认识。他说，如果你要是觉得他要是这个冒用国家工作人员，建议他报警。于是，在7月24号的时候，他就来到了江山镇的派出所，到派出所就报警了，跟派出所的人员讲啊，说你看这有对方的车牌号，然后对方的人他的行车记录仪都拍下来了吗？让警察看。
然后派出所这边的话，
他意思是说，对方现在他知道我个人信息可能是认识我身边的人，或者他认识我，我不认识他，就这种情况而已。我没有办法证明对方是通过某种渠道得到了我的个人信息。然后呢，说威胁的话，因为我现在这个人完好无损的，人家只是嘴上说说而已，并没有构成真正意义上的伤害，所以这件事情的话就无法受理。
So they told him this was just considered a civil dispute. The police said, "We don't handle this. If you think it's a disciplinary issue, you should go file a complaint with the Discipline Inspection Commission." With no other option, Mr. Li left the local police station. After leaving, he remembered that he had caught the other car's license plate on video, which meant the car was registered in Guangxi. He suspected the person might be from Nanning. So he called the disciplinary office of the Nanning Traffic Police Division in Guangxi province to file a complaint. He said, "Here's the plate number. This person is impersonating a government official and using that to enforce the law." That disciplinary office actually took it seriously.
然后南宁市交警支队西北那边他给我的回复是7月份的话，他们内部没有人查过我的个人信息，所以这个女的不是他们那边的。就让我再去看看其他部门。
So they said there was nothing they could do. The person wasn't part of their system. They suggested he take the matter up with the relevant local authorities. After filing the complaint with the Guangxi Provincial Traffic Police Division, he went on to call the 12345 government service hotline.
工作人员给我的回复就是说，我不能确定对方是不是公务人员，所以这个不能算违纪。只是说这个会车让路的问题，只是这个女的个人素质问题。
But think about it. How was Mr. Li supposed to know who this person really was? All he had were a few pieces of evidence. He caught her face on camera, and he got the license plate. That's it. All he could do was hand those over to the relevant government departments. But throughout the entire process, not a single government agency agreed to investigate further. With no other options, and feeling completely stuck, on the afternoon of July 31st, he posted the video online. He had a Douyin account, so he uploaded it there. And once it went online, everything exploded. Netizens were furious. I mean, think about it. A public servant, acting all arrogant, flashing her badge like it was a threat, saying, "Are you going to move or not? If not, I'll show you my credentials." Then not only showing the badge, but even revealing the guy's home address. People were outraged. The video spread fast. Everyone started sharing it. And then, at 10 p.m. that same night, something changed. What changed?
晚上10点20左右，奔驰车女司机，还有同车男子跟2名江山边防派出所的民警，还有另外1名穿便衣的男子，一起到我老家去找我，要求删除视频。那时候我们也在家，然后他们就找到了我妈，让我妈打电话。
That night, the police called Mr. Li directly. The phone call lasted 6 minutes. During the call, the officer told him, "You violated someone's privacy. Take the video down immediately." What privacy? The license plate number. The officer warned him that if he didn't delete it, he might be detained. He also told him to issue a public apology. After the 6-minute call, Mr. Li got a bit scared and deleted the video he had posted that afternoon. In fact, when he uploaded the video, he had already blurred out the license plate and the woman's face. So to be fair, Mr. Li actually had some legal awareness. He runs a business in Nanning, something like an education and training center. But maybe the blur he added wasn't strong enough. These days, there are tools online that can decode blurred images. And since people were so angry at this badge lady and felt she was way too arrogant as a government worker, some netizens used those tools to reverse the blur and uncover her license plate. After that, someone posted it online. So the police said Mr. Li had violated her privacy and told him to delete the video immediately. Even though he felt he had done his part by blurring the footage, the fact that people were still able to decode the plate from his video made him feel partly responsible. So, after the police call, he took the video down. But he didn't want to let the matter end there. He re-edited the video, adding a much heavier blur, thinking, "If you're accusing me of leaking private info, then I'll blur it so much no one can possibly decode it." Then he uploaded it again. That same night, he also stayed up to record an apology video, and to be fair, the apology came across as very sincere.
经过民警同志的耐心教导，我深刻地意识到我的不当行为可能会侵犯到尊贵的梅赛德斯奔驰车主的隐私。在此，我真诚地向尊贵的梅赛德斯奔驰车主道歉，向你全家道歉。
He apologized on several fronts. First, he apologized to the woman who showed her enforcement ID. After all, she showed her credentials. And he didn't immediately back down. That, he admitted, was wrong. He also apologized to the police, because when they called him at home, he didn't instantly comply. He even apologized to his own parents. The apology was very sincere. And if you watch the video, you'll see behind him the words freedom, democracy, justice, rule of law, integrity, kindness, the 24 core socialist values. The apology video, along with the newly edited, heavily blurred video, was uploaded again. That was at 2 a.m. on August 1st. After uploading it, he went to bed. But by the time he woke up the next morning, things had exploded even more. The reposts had already hit over 10 million. Ordinary people saw what happened. This guy ran into an arrogant badge lady, and instead of anything getting resolved, the police came knocking on his door. So the next day, the media jumped in. Several outlets began covering the story. That very afternoon, reporters started calling the publicity department of the Guangxi City Public Security Bureau. But during the calls, the staff there didn't know how to respond.
喂，我听不到你说什么，电话可能坏了。
喂喂，
坏了。
She just said, the phone's broken, and then hung up. You could tell she was panicking. I mean, come on, how does a phone break just like that? China is the world's manufacturing powerhouse. A broken phone? Really? Honestly, if someone manages to break a phone just by using it, I'd say that's a special talent, don't you think? So from how the Public Security Bureau's publicity staff reacted, you could tell she was scared. Later that same day, Guangxi City's Public Security Bureau made a public statement. They said, "We've taken note of the situation. We've immediately formed a task force. Everyone please stay calm. We're starting a full investigation." But according to Mr. Li, based on what he said in his online conversations, although they claimed to have started investigating, no one from the task force ever contacted him. He had no idea how they were conducting this so-called investigation. That was the night of August 1st. Then, on August 2nd, it was reported that a deputy mayor contacted him. The mayor told him the woman was actually the owner of a private business, not a government official. The ID she showed was fake, and the mayor offered him some words of reassurance. Then, on August 3rd, the joint local investigation team released an official report. What did it say? First, it confirmed the woman was an employee at a private company, 28 years old, not a public servant. Her parents are villagers. Her husband's surname is Li. He's a firefighter, a second-class firefighter in the local fire brigade. He does hold a real enforcement ID. It's not fake. As for how Mr. Li's personal info got leaked, the report claimed that when the incident happened, the woman's last name was Hao, and the man in the car, her father, was Hao Muhai. It turns out that Hao Muhai and Mr. Li are distant relatives, related within 5 degrees of kinship. What does within 5 degrees of kinship mean? Let's take a look at a video.
从昨天开始，五福这个是火了，不知道大家理解的五福是什么？我记得不出五福应该是这种：福不福，福不福，福不福，福不福啊，试试就行了，因为不出五福嘛。
So now everyone knows what within 5 degrees of kinship means, right? Basically, it means that your great-great-grandfather is the same person. That's roughly the idea. Then the report went on to explain how Hao Muhai knew Mr. Lieutenant. He knows Mr. Li's parents, and he also knows Mr. Li himself. But because Mr. Li is often away for work, he doesn't recognize Hao Muhai. So when Hao Muhai told him, "You live in such and such place," it was simply because he already knew where their family lives. See? It wasn't that law enforcement officers used the police access system to look up Mr. Li's personal info. It had nothing to do with that. Let me add one more piece of information here. Nowadays, in order to prevent abuse of power, the police access system has a full audit trail. That means it logs who searched what, at what time, on which device, using which access key. Everything is tracked in the back end. So if anyone had looked up Mr. Li's data, it would have been easy to trace. According to the police, no one accessed Mr. Li's personal information in July. The address was known only because they're related within 5 degrees of kinship. That's the second point. The third part they addressed was what happened on July 31st. On that day, Hao Mumu, along with her father and her husband, went to the police station to report a case. They said someone was using a fake license plate that matched theirs, which is very dangerous, and that their personal info had been leaked online. So the police went to Mr. Lee's parents' house and called him from there. They said that even though the tone used during the call wasn't very friendly, overall, the handling of the situation was within regulations. As for the broken phone issue, they explained that too. The phone wasn't actually broken. The person answering the media calls just didn't have enough experience, and they've since been criticized and educated internally. So that's basically the content of the report. But after reading it, I have to say, I don't think it's a very satisfactory report. Honestly, it's not a good one. Let's talk about a few points. First of all, they say Ho Mo Hai and Mr. Lee's family are within 5 degrees of kinship, right? So if Ho Mo Hai really was a relative within 5 degrees of kinship, and he recognized Mr. Lee at the scene, then why didn't he just say, "Hey, aren't you Lee Mumu? I'm your second uncle. We're related." He didn't say that, right? He didn't mention they were family. And honestly, that doesn't line up with normal human behavior. What's even more unusual is what happened on July 31st. That was the day Mr. Lee posted the incident online. If they were truly relatives, then under normal circumstances, wouldn't Ho Mo Hai call Mr. Lee's parents first? Like, "Hey, your son posted something online about us. We're all family, right? Ask him to take the video down. Let's talk this out." Isn't that how people usually handle things between relatives? But Ho Mo Hai didn't do that. What did he do instead? On the night of July 31st, he brought 2 police officers and went straight to Mr. Lee's parents' house and knocked on the door. We don't know what kind of customs they have in Fangchenggang. Maybe in that area, when relatives visit each other, they don't bring gifts, they bring cops. Is that a local tradition in Fangchenggang? If any of our viewers are from Fangchenggang, feel free to leave a comment and let us know. If that's a local custom, then fine, we'll accept it. But if it's not, then why didn't Ho Mo Hai just give the family a heads-up call? That's why I personally think this whole thing is very unusual. That's the first point. The second point concerns personal information. They said the police access system, Jingwu Tong, didn't show any record of Mr. Lee's data being looked up. Okay, maybe that's true. But let me give you some background. The Jiangshan Town Border Police Station is not the same as a regular police station. Why? Because border police stations, in theory, belong to a different system than regular public security organs. In the past, these stations were under the Border Defense Corps, which was managed by the armed police. But in recent years, due to China's institutional reforms, the military, police, and government have been separated into distinct systems. So the Border Defense Corps was removed from the armed police system and placed under the National Immigration Administration. Normally, their duties involve things like smuggling and illegal immigration. But in some places with smaller populations, these border police stations have been merged with local stations and also take on community policing duties. That's the case for the Jiangshan Town Station. Technically, it falls under the Immigration Bureau, but it also handles public order issues in the local area. However, in terms of jurisdiction, the station is still under vertical management, meaning it answers to the Border Defense Bureau, not the local Public Security Bureau. The local police only have business guidance rights. They don't manage it directly. So the question becomes, if the police access system didn't show any query of Mr. Lee's info, what about the border police system? Because the border system also holds national citizen data. In fact, they even have their own version of the police access system, a border police access system. So, was Mr. Lee's information looked up in the border police access system? At the very least, this investigation report doesn't say so. It doesn't mention whether the border police system was checked at all, nor whether his information might have been accessed through other channels. So I feel that this part of the report isn't very convincing either. That's the second point. The third point is about the enforcement ID. In our country, which departments are allowed to issue law enforcement IDs? Departments like the Tax Bureau, Public Security, Urban Management, Ecological Enforcement. Basically, any department with enforcement powers will issue such credentials. According to these regulations, even the fire department can issue enforcement IDs. These are used in the context of fire safety enforcement. For example, when they inspect buildings for proper fire equipment, if a building lacks the required systems, the fire department can issue fines. In those cases, they must show their administrative enforcement ID. Now, Hu Mumu's husband, his surname is Li. According to the investigation report, he is a level 2 firefighter. And level 2 firefighter is really just one rank above entry level. You start as level 3 when you join the force, and then you get promoted to level 2. So basically, he's still quite junior. Yes, it's true, level 2 firefighters can have an enforcement ID. But here's what's strange. The night before, the deputy mayor called Mr. Li and told him that enforcement ID is fake. Yet now, in the official investigation report, they say the ID is real. So which is it? If it's real, then that deputy mayor openly made a false statement the night before, which amounts to spreading misinformation. And when a deputy mayor does that, it's far more serious than a regular citizen doing the same thing online. Think about it. Just the other day in Beijing, there was a flood and 41 people died. If someone online falsely said 42 people died, just one more, they'd get arrested for spreading rumors. If they said only 35 people died, well, maybe they wouldn't be arrested, because that's less. And in China, we welcome that kind of rumor. But if you dare say even one more than the official number, boom, you're arrested. That's the fine line ordinary people face. 41 versus 42. That's all it takes. So now you've got the deputy mayor of Fangchenggang publicly saying an enforcement ID is fake when it's not. That kind of misinformation, in my view, is far more damaging than a netizen making a mistake about death tolls. So shouldn't this deputy mayor be detained? Shouldn't he be charged with picking quarrels and provoking trouble? But no. No investigation has been opened into the mayor's false statement. No criminal detention. That's not normal. So I think this shows they definitely didn't get their story straight before releasing this report. That's the third major issue. The fourth issue, and I think it's even more suspicious, is that this entire investigation report clearly dodges the key questions. It never explains the relationship between public power and the Hao family. Let's take a look at the timeline. On the night of July 31st, the Hou family went to the Zhongshan Town police station to report a case. The time was 9:10 p.m. Then they showed up at Mr. Li's parents' house at exactly 10:17 p.m. That's a total of 1 hour and 7 minutes. That's lightning speed. Honestly, in a normal case, that amount of time wouldn't even be enough to finish a simple police interview. Normally, if you go to the police station to file a report, they'll ask you a series of questions. They'll take your statement, and that takes time. A formal report and written record? You're looking at least 2 hours. But in this case, they arrived at the station at 9:10 and showed up at Mr. Li's family home just over an hour later. There's only one possible explanation for this. The three of them arrived at the station, and the police skipped all normal procedures and just immediately headed to Mr. Li's parents' home. In fact, Mr. Li mentioned one specific detail online. His family has a security camera outside their home. The footage shows 5 people arriving. Leading the group was Hu Mohai, the central figure in all this. Behind him were 2 police officers. That means the police weren't leading this operation. They were following Hu Mohai's lead. And when they knocked on the door, it was Hu Mohai doing most of the talking to Mr. Li's parents. The police were just standing by. They weren't the ones taking charge of the situation. That's highly irregular. Now, some people might say, well, maybe the police were just being helpful, providing late-night service to the public. But let's compare this with something else. On July 24th, Mr. Li himself had gone to the Zhongshan police station to file a report. What was his report about? He suspected that someone was impersonating a government official, using a law enforcement ID to intimidate ordinary citizens. That's potentially a criminal offense. According to Chinese law, if someone pretends to be a public official and enforces the law, they can face up to 3 years in prison. That's a serious criminal matter. And what did the police tell him? We can't handle this. It's just a civil dispute. Go sort it out with the other party. Think about that. A potential felony. And the police refused to investigate. But then, when the Hao family showed up at the station on July 31st, claiming that their privacy had been violated, the police immediately followed them to Mr. Lee's parents' house. But wait, is a license plate even considered private information? It's not. You literally display your license plate on the front of your car. If you cover it up, you can actually be fined. So by law, a license plate is public information. And in Mr. Lee's case, he didn't even reveal the plate. He blurred it out in the video. Even if he had shown the plate number online, it still wouldn't be illegal. Afterward, he consulted with lawyers and they confirmed clearly what he did was not against the law. But even though Mr. Lee clearly didn't break any laws, the police still followed Hu Mo-hai's family in the middle of the night to go knock on his parents' door. Does that sound normal to you? So we have to ask, what exactly is the relationship between Hu Mo-hai's family and the police? Was there abuse of power involved here? The investigation report doesn't mention a single word about this. That's why I say this report is completely unacceptable. If the local authorities really want to resolve this issue, the investigation needs to be escalated. It's clear they either don't have the ability or they simply don't have the will to give the public the full truth. After reading the full story, my personal opinion is this. Even if everything they claim is true, it still reveals one serious problem. Public power was lent out for private use. Now we all understand what public power means. Public power is created when each of us gives up a small part of our individual rights and hands that over to the state. The power the state holds is what we call public authority or public power. But there's a very important restriction on how that power can be used. It must only be exercised for the public good. That is the very essence of public power. But what happened in this case? Let me walk you through how public power was lent out, how it was used for private interests. The first instance was on July 22nd, when Mr. Lee and Hu Mumu had their brief encounter while trying to pass each other on the road. Hao told him to reverse his car. Mr. Lee refused. There was another car behind him. Then Ho said, "If you won't move, I'll show you my badge." She flashed an enforcement ID. What was that ID? According to the investigation report, it belonged to her husband, Lee Mumu, and he had just left it in her car. That's already not normal, because such an ID can only be used during official enforcement duties, not in private situations. So what happened here? Hu Mumu used her husband's enforcement ID, essentially borrowing public authority for her own use. That's the first case of public power being loaned out. Then comes the second case. Mr. Lee suspects his personal information was accessed through law enforcement privilege by someone using an internal police system. Now, the official investigation says no one looked him up in the police access system. But like I mentioned earlier, what about the border police system? That wasn't mentioned. If they had used any privileged system to look up Mr. Lee's identity, then that too would be a case of public authority being used for private purposes. And once again, that is the abuse of public power. In fact, the suspicion of abuse is still highly plausible. Why? As we mentioned earlier, the relationship between the people at the police station and the Hao family clearly isn't ordinary. If it were ordinary, would they be showing up in the middle of the night to help out like that? That's the second example. The second time public power was lent out. The third time was also on July 31st, when the police followed Hu Mo-hai's family and knocked on Mr. Lee's parents' door late at night. In my view, this clearly constituted an abuse of authority. If this had been a proper police report, what should have happened? The police should have taken a full statement, then told them to go home, and conducted an independent investigation later. Maybe contact Mr. Lee directly after verifying his information. That's standard procedure. If it's a criminal case, investigate. If it's a civil matter, send them home, not our jurisdiction. But in this case, the police made no such determination. They just followed Hu Mo-hai straight to Mr. Lee's family home. Was there any legal basis for enforcement? Absolutely not. And don't forget, this wasn't some emergency like murder or arson. It was just someone allegedly leaking a license plate number online. and the police went to someone's house with the other party to confront them. That's not proper law enforcement. That's abuse of power. Also, how can police officers conduct enforcement while standing with one side of the dispute? It's not like they were going to a crime scene. And in the end, even the police themselves admitted, this is just a civil dispute. Well, if it's a civil dispute, then why were you so eager to help one party, in the middle of the night, show up at someone's house, make a phone call, and then threaten the other person? Delete the video now, or we'll detain you. That is the textbook definition of abuse of power. In that moment, the power of law enforcement was once again borrowed by the Hao family. So through this whole situation, I think what really triggered the public's anger is precisely this: the power we, as citizens, gave up, the power we entrusted to the state and its enforcement agencies, was supposed to be used to protect everyone's shared interest. But in the badge lady incident in Fangchenggang, we saw public power being casually lent out to people who had the right connections. And that power was then used to serve personal interests, to protect those individuals, and to openly intimidate ordinary citizens. That's what made us all feel such fear and such rage. If this issue isn't fully investigated, then this story can't just end here. In my view, here's what should happen. Badge lady, who impersonated a government official, should be criminally charged. Her husband should not only be fired, but also face disciplinary and legal consequences. The officers at the Jiangshan police station, for abusing their law enforcement authority, should also be removed from office and formally investigated. That's the only way to give the public a real explanation. Otherwise, people will never let this go. And we'll keep using videos like Badge Lady to mock the very system of public power. That's all I wanted to share today. Thank you.
有网友慢慢来，这位网友在问啊，到底是什么证呢？你当时应该是一下子就能看到它是什么证，然后属于哪个部门啊？
他只是给我看了封面，对于这种证，反正就是有行政什么，大概类型就是执法证之类的吧。
执法证，那是红色的还是什么？
黑色的，黑色的。
黑色的执法证。上面有什么徽吗？
有的。
也有。哦。这个在你的。
民警打电话过来，叫上视频，我就问他跟这个女的司机是什么，是什么关系吧？就问他们是什么关系？为什么说要半夜的上门要求我删视频啊之类的？我就说当时这个女的，她的那种拿证出来的这种行为啊，有没有违纪啊之类的？然后当时那个女的她说她没有拿证，没有拿证出来这个行为，她是否认的？
她说她没有了。
他说他没有拿，这个我是有电话录音的。要让就叫我往后退，我说我也退不了，后面车，那我就拿证了哦。我听到他拿证，然后当时他手上确实是有一个黑色的那个证。什么证就不说了，就是反正就是能代表某些权利的吧。然后我就是挺生气的，我说，你拿证又怎么样了？我说你这个有什么了不起嘛？后面他说那就报警咯，就接着报警就报警嘛。